Hello everyone, we are going to be making a couple of bouquets and then we're going to be doing a quick chat about what's happening, including why I don't have a lot of flowers, a little bit of just like general life update and a hint towards what I'm planning for next year. But before we talk about all that, I do want to show you the flowers that we currently have. I have some really pretty flowers, but the problem is I don't have a lot of them. These are some of the favorite zinnias that I grew from last year. These are from the Dawn Creek lineage, and they were sold by Flower People. And what I did was I took the nicest, fluffiest zinnia that had layers like this, and I saved seed. And I saved enough seed to have, I think it was like a couple hundred. So you can see this is what the offspring looks like. Now, randomly, I also got offspring that look like this color. It's a little bit more cactus, but it's funny to see how seed saving works out, especially for something like zinnias, especially when they're open pollinated. I'm not controlling for that, but I've got some other stuff. I've got a ton of celosia, and even though I have so much of this one type of wheat celosia, which is called Selway, I diversified this year to getting plugs for this type, which is called Supercrest. Now, they were planted a little bit more closely together, as well as the fact that when I got them, they were quite tall. So these are a little bit smaller than what I was hoping for, but I do think that they are still so funky and so cool, and they add textural contrast to the wheat type. So even though they're both celosia, when you see them in a bouquet, they do give a different feel and vibe. I've got a little bit of amaranth. This is like all self-seeded amaranth, like one sea holly over here. We've got some cosmos, and this is from the first succession of cosmos. They're winding down, and I've got a second succession coming along. Got a couple sprigs of 9-bark, which I could always harvest more of. And then this has actually been the filler that has saved my butt over the past few weeks. This is lamb's quarter, which is a weed, but I love the color. I love how it has these little, almost like pom-pom flowers. And overall, they last pretty well in a vase. So this is actually also nearing a little bit later in its lifespan. And it's perfect because it holds up really well right now, but it's gonna start shedding soon. I let a lot of these go in the sense I didn't weed them, and I'm really glad I did that. So you can see I don't have a ton of flowers to make a lot of bouquets. I've got some a la carte orders, but it'll be perfect because I'll be able to make these really quickly. I do have to get E ready for school and have a long day of work, and I want to get these out. So we may take up some of the chatting afterwards. There we go. Actually getting kind of warm outside. All right. So let's start off by talking about why I don't have a lot of flowers. And it's really because last year around July 4th, I had done a lot of seed starting. I had put quite a bit of plugs in the ground, and I got a big flush of flowers towards the end of August. And at the time I said to myself, it's a little too early. I don't want that many flowers that quickly. Why don't I push everything back by 2 weeks and do some additional successions after? So instead of putting stuff into the ground in like early July, I started putting stuff into the ground in mid to late July with my final succession in August. It was like second week of August. And this year what changed was the fact that we've been having very dry weather throughout basically the entire month of August. And that had a huge impact on how fast things were growing, and just like things were not dying by any means, but they certainly weren't thriving, and it caused a stall in growth relative to last year. So I think that if I had stuck with the same planting pattern as last year or timing, I probably would have made out a little bit better, because I certainly would have flowers later versus last year, meaning I would have flowers probably right now. So always something that you learn in farming, which is that what happens in 1 year is obviously not always going to carry over to next year, especially when it comes to timing. So it is what it is, and it's fine because work has been so busy and I have to travel next week, which I'm now at a point in life where if I could just stay at home and never hop on a plane, I would be perfectly happy. All this to say that it's been really busy on the work front, and so I'm not necessarily upset that I don't have flowers to make. And luckily I have a pretty flexible CSA type of arrangement where people know, hey, like when I have flowers, I will offer them. But right now we are pretty short on flowers. So everyone's okay with that. At the end of the day, I was actually really trying to maximize this later September, October timeframe. And that actually now feels like it's coming to fruition, where some of the snapdragons and the stock that I had are coming up. The only issue is something is getting into the field, and it's not a deer. It's something that's probably like a fox or something, but it's eating some of my flowers. I had stock that was starting to bud up, and it ate the stock, of course. This is what this bouquet looks like. You can see that it's just very fall-esque, which I like. And this filler over here definitely gives it a little bit of just more oomph. I'm actually gonna add another stem of Cosmos. Cosmos really saved me over the last few weeks, and I'm a little sad that I don't have that many Cosmos left. Of course, I forgot rubber bands. I'll be back. My rubber bands and moving the tripod to the other side so that way you guys can more clearly see me. But the other reason why I don't have many flowers right now is because I chose not to grow dahlias this year, and I am definitely regretting that decision. Dahlias do a really good job of being cut and come again this time of year. Usually by late August in central New Jersey, you are going to have your dahlias. And last year I had tried to overwinter a lot of my dahlias in the ground. I put leaf mulch on there. I didn't do the greatest mulching, but nothing survived. And we did have an above average cold type of winter, so that didn't help. But the fact of the matter is I basically lost all of my dahlia tubers. I didn't have the mental bandwidth to try to store the tubers last year. So I decided this year that I would forego dahlias and instead really invest in mums. And don't get me wrong, the mums are starting to finally bud up. It feels like it's taken forever for them to show any buds. But the problem is they're not a crop that gets ready until at least later September here. So I am left without a true reliable focal. And even though I have zinnias, it's not the same. Don't get me wrong, zinnias are super pretty, but I just feel like that they're not the same as a dahlia or even sunflowers for that matter for the focals that I typically rely on. So as a result, it's been honestly a little hard to make bouquets, and I have pushed my CSA back as a result of that. So I still provide weekly bouquets to the country store, but for the most part, I'm not able to do a ton of other a la carte stuff or even take on wedding type of requests. Not that I do like crazy wedding stuff, but if someone is requesting mason jars or whatever, typically I'm able to do that. This time around, I'm not. So that has been disappointing and a lesson learned. The floret seed sale went up a few days ago, as I'm sure many of you guys participated in. And of course, I snagged myself some dahlia seeds. I know that dahlia seeds are not necessarily the most reliable in terms of having the types of dahlias that you want, and perhaps sometimes you might even get those singles that don't have the greatest phase life. But I have grown from seed from dahlia, not from floret seed, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun because obviously you don't know what's coming up, and you get to have that surprise element. But I did get a few cool dahlias that I was able to use, and I had actually even saved some of those tubers, and those went to my dad. So I am looking forward to trying that once again and seeing how it goes the second time around. So that seed's been ordered some celosia along the way too, just because I really like some of the celosia that she has. And next year I plan on planting a lot more of the plume types, or maybe it's not plume, but she has the spun candy and those types that are a completely different habit from the ones that I currently have today. So this one's over here, and this is what this one looks like. Looks pretty good. With the CSA this year, it has been going well. I usually lay out the dates in the beginning of the season, so when someone's signing up, they have the dates. But what I've really noticed and learned is that people don't really remember. Like, I'll send out an email to be like, oh wait, like I have pickup this week. So that actually made it easier for me to say, okay, I need to delay this because I don't have the flowers, and I'm going to offer you guys some more options in September and October, and no one really cared. In fact, they're all like, yeah, cool. If you are in a similar boat, don't fret. Just tell them the truth that this is farming. Things are not as predictable as we hoped in terms of getting flowers at this time. And I do cite the fact that we had a very dry August, and typically either you have a dry spell, you have flooding, you have whatever it is that impacts your ability to produce a crop. And it really helps bring to light the fact that this is what they're supporting, and that there is a bit of irregularity or unpredictableness that I think is really important for you to bring them along. I am making this a pretty celosia heavy bouquet, but that's okay. People have really liked the celosia. In fact, I've even sold straight bunches of celosia at the country store, saying that they are forever flowers because you can dry them. So it's a hefty bunch. It's 15, 16 stems. And I sold it for $25. And I also said, if you turn it upside down and black balls come out, that's not bugs, those are seeds. So you could even grow next year. And that got people excited. It's all about marketing. And we might think of celosia as a not so profitable flower, but for people who are looking to preserve or to have flowers for a long time, there is definitely a good value proposition that a celosia has that obviously a zinnia or sunflower won't be able to have. All right, 1, 2, 3. Look at that, we're getting there on this one. And I have some celosia left over. I will have to make some more bouquets later, but that's this one. So not a lot of bouquets for right now, but at least we cranked out 3 pretty quickly. And then let me wrap these. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. So I have my paper here. We recently got rid of some of our patio furniture because it was starting to fall apart. So now I'm working on a side space, which is nice, but it's a little smaller than what I'm used to. Okay. So 1. Okay. I'm going to put the camera down a bit more so you guys can see it. Yep. Fold it like this. This is a new method that I've taken on this year that I've really continued to like. The credit goes to b.a.r.e. from Blossom and Branch, and this is how she had folded or prepared her bouquets with peonies. And I think it just really helps open up the bouquet so that it's clear what's in there and it doesn't hide anything, so therefore giving it greater perceived value. All right, so let me show you what they look like. And here we are. I feel like they look pretty cheery despite having some moody vibes from the amaranth and the 9 bark. There's just this like pop of sorbet with that burgundy, and this is the one that doesn't have the amaranth, so you can see that the mood is a little bit lighter. We do have a plum pro cut. By the way, all of my plum pro cut sunflowers had disease. It's the first time ever I've had a failed succession of sunflowers because of disease and not like a deer eating them. So that was kind of weird, but this one pulled through. Anyway, yeah, look how dainty these look. So this video will pick up after I finish work today. It is now later in the day and I am in the field. I did a quick farm tour a couple of weeks ago, and really nothing has changed that much. It looks like that there's a lot of color. Unfortunately, it's all color of the same thing, which is celosia. And I've been spending a lot of time in the field, not related to flowers, but actually related to growing and preserving food. So I thought I'd give you guys just a little bit of an update on what's happening here on life even, as well as plans for next year. So we've grown a lot of tomatoes. I've been making a lot of tomato sauce, which has been awesome. And I continue to make E's feeds. And one thing I'm really proud of this year is the fact that since the month of May, all of her feeds have been 100% coming from the field, the stuff that I've grown. So E has a G tube, which allows us to basically pump medicine, but also blenderized food into her stomach. And as a 2.5-year-old, she is not very fond of vegetables. So that is how we get her vegetables into her. And every single week, I make sure that she has a mix of rich green leafy greens in there, as well as some other stuff. So right now we've got like zucchini just coming out of the wazoo. I've also even got some cantaloupe. I don't blend that in there. Obviously she'll eat it by mouth, but the G-tube gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we want to be in there. And I'm just so proud of the fact that I am able to feed her with stuff that's grown here. And that's important to me because I obviously know what goes into our soil. I feel like that there's a lot more control in that aspect than just buying something off the shelf. So that part is just really important to us. And as we head into 2026, there are some things that have been a little bit more top of mind for me than what would have been in other years. So for example, I think one of the biggest things that I'm changing that's going to be surprising to a lot of people is field tulips. I'm actually not going to be growing any field tulips here. And it's less driven by cost, but more by the fact that we buy in thousands of these bulbs that are sprayed. They have to be sprayed by fungicide to make sure that there's no diseases and all that stuff. But all of that means is that it's sitting in our soil. And I think it's one thing to have something like corms, which are relatively small. Even if you do 1,000 of them, it's not like tulip bulbs where it just feels like there's a lot more area mass that could be sprayed. And, in the grand scheme, it's really not that bad or much because the half-life of these fungicides are relatively quick. So by the time it goes into your soil and it overwinters and you're growing vegetables in the same spot, hypothetically speaking, it's not a big deal. But for our family, because of E's and Eric's mutations, they have less bandwidth or less buffer to tolerate things like that. And if it's not necessary, I'm just going to eliminate it. So as a result, we're not growing any field tulips here. Add on to the fact that specialty tulips and tulip bulbs as a whole are increasing in price. So what I've done is almost unthinkable. I have bought those mass tulip bulbs that you get from like a Tulip World or a Holland Bulbs, and we are going to plant it over there in the landscaping. I'm walking a little closer here so you can see this because this is completely new. One of the things that we invested in this summer was hiring out the edging of this area. You can see there's a lot of weeds, so we got to pull that back. But we purposely had them edge a little bit further up so that way we could pour in tulip bulbs and then I could just dump soil on top. And so when you do the math, I think that it might actually make sense to grow these smaller tulips that come in mass from these companies and sell perhaps 15 in a bunch for the same price that you normally would like 8 or 9. Because the truth of the matter is there are some people who appreciate things like parrots and doubles, but a lot of people just want that common tulip. So at the end of the day, this is an experiment to see if it works. And if there is no demand for these tulips, I'm just going to leave them there because they're going to look pretty. They're going to perennialize year over year for us. And having them a little bit further back just feels better. So this area looks really sad right now, but there are some stuff in the ground. So we've got some like Rudbeckia. I've got some perennials like Astilbe, King Solomon, some Baptisia, peonies in here. So this is a bit of a hodgepodge. We're going to let it grow out and hopefully it's going to look nice from far away too, but also give me some more stuff to harvest from to be able to put into cut bouquets in the future. And we're continuing just to put stuff in here. So the biggest thing that I put in last weekend was bearded iris. I ordered probably to the tune of like 300 rhizomes from Shriner's Garden as well as Ampersand Bulb Company. And that is an investment in not just for cut flowers, but also to like beautify this area a little bit more that we can also enjoy. But this was a really big project. So we got the edging done over here. We got the edging done also like back there. So there's a lot more areas that we have access to in terms of planting. We are entering into mid-September, and you can see that these mums are really, really, really tall, but these guys here do not have any buds yet. And it's like, when are you going to start flowering? But if you come over here, there are definitely some mums that are starting to show signs of flowering. Where are they? I think this is one over here. Actually, that's not a great one. Just saw some yesterday. Where did they go? They are, aha, they're over here. So you can see that there's a little bud, some buds over here, but this is still going to take time, like weeks, if anything, to get something. So I don't think those guys are coming until October. And there's a lot of cleanup needed over here. I'm so excited that the hypericum is starting to bloom and give me longer stems. I'm also starting to see some like powdery mildew across, so I think that a cleanup is going to be in order soon. But right now, I'm just so focused on harvesting the stuff, trying to preserve it, and this is a bit of an embarrassment, but I have so many zucchini. Some of them are getting unwieldy and huge that I need to do something about them. All right, but this isn't a farm tour. This is talking about just like what's happening. So the other thing that's been happening in life, which has given, I guess, a little bit less time to the farm, is the fact that we have really been prioritizing our health. And I feel like we have always prioritized it. We've always sought to work out every single day. But I think that not only are we doing that now, we work out probably, I would say, 5 to 6 days a week, but we're also like very mindful around the cooking aspect of it. We traditionally cook, but I feel like some of the stuff is getting a little bit more involved, especially as we're taking stuff from the field, like so making the tomato sauces and stuff like that. So I feel like we're investing a lot more into our health, which is a really good thing. I'm also even now spending time in the mornings to meditate once again. I think that meditation is really important, especially the busier you get, the more important it becomes. So just really finding that time to prioritize ourselves with really this understanding that the field will always be here and that my health and family come first before I want to like overwork myself, right? So that also really feeds into or reinforces the fact that I like this being a part-time gig. I'm not a volume-driven type of business, and it's here to serve me, not the other way around. The final thing that's really coming up for me that's going to be really big is we are getting our orders of corms coming in. So a lot of ranunculus and anemone corms. I have practically sold out of elegance ranunculus, but I still have quite a bit of what I call the beginner ranunculus, which is stuff that I've grown before that has turned out pretty well. I am going to be trying to grow a much bigger crop of ranunculus in the spring this year, so we're going to try overwintering. But if you are interested in corms, they're on my website. They're available to order. We're going to be shipping out within the next couple of weeks, so they're supposedly en route to me. And really what now I have to do is figure out a system. So I've already had a system from last year, but one of the biggest differences from this year versus last year is I'm offering a lot more colors. So when you offer more SKUs or varieties in this case, you are setting yourself up for a bigger logistical challenge, because how do you fulfill all these orders that have different colors, different combinations? So even when I was setting up the shop in terms of like what I would allow for, I decided to sacrifice quantity for more colors. Last year we offered bags of 25, 50, and even 100. This year we're only offering bags of 50. So you can buy 50 of each color or even of a mix. And for some of the mixes, we actually do have to make them, which is why they are a little bit more expensive compared to the single color options, but that's one way of cutting down on the logistical time, which is that everything is very uniform. But the shipping part of it, I'm trying to also automate a little bit more. Last year, what was a little bit hard was I was selling a bunch of stuff like daffodil bulbs, tulip bulbs. So if you had multiple types of products in one singular order, I was shipping them out at different times. And how do you keep track of everything? So this year, we've kind of dialed it back a lot more, where basically everything is going out at the same time. That being said, I do have some pre-chilled tulips that are available for sale. I don't have a ton, but they are on there if that's what you're looking for. And I expect them to get here sometime probably in like November, maybe late November. And I will be shipping out as soon as I get them. But yeah, if you're looking to have corms for the spring or even over winter, now's the time to go online and see whether or not you're interested in purchasing. The last thing from a planning perspective is one of the goals is to have some raised beds in this latter part of the area, both from a weeding control perspective, but also just from the fact that I'm starting to see things eat stuff in the field. Like I had stock that was about to flower, something chomped it down, something chomped down on all of my ornamental kale, which is really sad because I don't think I'm gonna have any kale. And even if it survived the chomping, there's cabbage worms that are also decimating parts of it. So it is what it is, I'm letting it go. But so we wanna build some beds, and Eric has been equally as busy as I have been. So I don't know whether or not we're going to get that built before the end of fall, or if that's going to be a next year type of thing. But I will also be digging up quite a bit of sea holly, especially this year, knowing that I didn't need as much. I'm even thinking about digging up quite a bit of the yarrow over there. What I'm finding is that the yarrow is really useful, but I can get away potentially with not having 2 rows of yarrows. So preserving one over there and taking out that side, and potentially being able to build raised beds on there that can be flipped a little bit more, because there is a lot of dead space here between the yarrow and the sea holly that kind of just like sits there and gets really, really weedy. And it's just like not the best use of my time trying to maintain it, or even the space, especially now that I'm not selling wholesale. So you can see that the wheels are in motion in terms of thinking about how I better optimize this space as I shift more towards retail, more production of vegetables for ourselves, trying to cut down on the weeding time, and not letting this concept of sunk cost, meaning that like I put in all these perennials, gave them the space and stuff, and I'm now about to rip them out. Like, you know, I don't have this concept of I need to do something because the time and the space was already invested. Like if something needs to change, I'm a big believer that you just do it, and you can always redo it again if you have to. So hopefully next year I'm going to have a bit more of an intentional type of crop plan, trying to hit more of spring, pulling back more on summer, except for when it's Lisianthus season. I'm even also trying to figure out how do I potentially delay Lisianthus even further out. What are certain varieties that can be pinched to allow for that while still getting great stem length? And also then pairing some of the mums with some of the dahlias that I want to grow, so that I can have more of like an explosive late August going into September and ending strong in October. So season is starting to wind down. The days are getting shorter, but we are by no means at the finish line. If anything, I feel pretty excited because I've got some plants that are showing great growth, and I think they're going to flower within the next few weeks. So I'm going to end this video just showing you what's in growth.